and welcome back to my channel. So I came across this video on TikTok of a white woman who posted this video saying that white people are also victims of racism, or rather white people also experience racism. So let's get into the video and then we're gonna talk.
Assume that because we're white we don't experience racism, and coming from a white woman, I'm only talking about my own perspective. I can't speak for black people, I can't speak for any other race.
Okay, so my take on this is that white people rarely or barely experience racism. It's not a systemic issue. Nothing comes close to what black people experience. That is my point. And also that reverse racism does not exist at all. So you can't experience racism as a white person. Yeah, so that's my take on that. Let's watch other videos, but please let me know what you think about this in the comment section below, and let's go.
Oh, honey, sit down. I hope this video finds you. I tried to look for the original, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I've had to have this discussion with myself, with friends and family, and even my own children. But now it's time that mommy has a discussion with you. So you're under the impression that you and I as white people can experience racism. And I'm sure you go on to tell us a story that you think proves that. You see, you and I as white people cannot and will not ever experience racism. Like reverse racism, as I've often heard it called, is a bullshit myth. It's a myth because it completely ignores the power and privilege dynamic that makes up racism. Assumptions and stereotypes exist for sure, but that's called racial prejudice. And prejudice can hurt your feelings. I completely understand that. But it's the systemic relationship to power, which yes, you and I both have as white people, that results in discrimination and oppression. We were born with an inherent power and advantage over our BIPOC counterparts, and thus they cannot be racist. Privilege definitely has like a spectrum, right? We don't always have it easy. There's a lot of white people who struggle in many, many different ways, and I'm not denying that. But those struggles are in spite of being white, not because of it. We have never been denied education or jobs or opportunities because of our ethnicity. Our voices are never silenced. We're not stalked and followed and profiled as criminals because of our whiteness. Let's not confuse the occasional and often justifiable judgment that we receive from the BIPOC community with the systemic and institutionalized mistreatment that they've suffered through at the hands of white people for centuries. We have the power to dismantle this bullshit. So let's use it for that.
I find that a good way to help people who have a different lived experience than you exercise empathy for the struggles that you face that they may not be familiar with is to help them understand. And I was hoping that you could help me understand what anti-white racism looks like. Can you tell me about how you don't know where your ancestors came from because they were kidnapped and enslaved? Or how you don't know what languages they spoke, what spiritual practices they had, or what traditional knowledge that should have been your birthright was lost? Not because they were allowed to and wanted to assimilate, but because their enslavers or residential schools forced them to assimilate. Can you tell me about how your ancestors had explosives tied to them while they were building the United States railroads? And then as a show of appreciation, they were excluded from society for nearly 60 years? And could you tell me about the hundreds of towns that were destroyed, like the Black towns and Chinatowns and Japan towns, all destroyed by the same demographic? Can you tell me about the children who were unalived because they whistled at a woman or because they floated in a lake a little too far past the segregation line? And can you tell me how it was for your parents and your grandparents to be United States citizens who were put in internment camps on United States soil? Can you tell me how it was for your family to live in the back of their store because people who look like you were not allowed to purchase or rent homes? And could you tell me how it was for your parents and for you to shed blood, to be treated as human, as equal, and to be allowed to simply share the same space as other people? Can you tell me about the conversations that you have to have with your children about police interactions? And could you tell me about how your mother and your sisters and your daughters are concerned about having children because of lack of equitable access to healthcare, because doctors were told that people who look like you can't feel pain? Can you tell me how it feels to know that your ancestors lived here for thousands of years, but when you try to come here, you and your children are put in cages? And can you tell me how it felt when a few years ago, the president entertained having people who look like you expelled from the country again? Can you tell me what anti-white racism looks like beyond having your feelings hurt, feeling uncomfortable, and having your sense of superiority challenged? And when you're done telling me what anti-white racism feels like for you, could you please tell me why you're not fighting to end racism for everybody?
Listen, as much as I hate our school system, I think if you paid attention in class a smidgen better, you'd understand what you're talking about a smidgen more. Because the idea that every single white person in America, or even most, was just out there like, get him, is absolutely insane. I mean, who fought for that freedom? I don't suppose a group of racist individuals got together and was like, you know what, it'd be real funny if we abolish slavery. That'll get them, that'll show them. No. America has always had a set of morals that we should and would like to uphold. Now, have we had struggles and challenges upholding those values? Of course, naturally. But we've always had those values, because to ignore where we were then and how far we've come would be completely ignorant. I mean, if the outcome of the Civil War and the destruction of Jim Crow laws is an example of white people winning too much, then who did you really want to win?
One of the funniest things to me is that when having a conversation about whether white people can experience racism, someone will always bring up Irish people or the Holocaust. And it's crazy to me because, first and foremost, who oppressed them? White people. So how can it be racism if the oppression is occurring within the same racial group? And obviously it's nuanced when it comes to the Holocaust because not all Jewish people are white. And obviously being discriminated against because you're poor or an immigrant or because of your ethnicity or religion is not okay. It's disgusting. But Irish people were not oppressed because they were white. They were oppressed because they were Irish. Jewish people were not oppressed because they're white. They were oppressed because they're Jewish. And the fact that you're completely disregarding the context and history behind why they were treated the way they were, just to try and use it to prove your point, is kind of disgusting as well. And furthermore, even if you look at the laws that were in place in specifically America, for example, with interracial marriage, it was not illegal for someone of British descent to marry an Italian or an Irish person. It was only against the law for a white person to marry a black person or an indigenous person or South and East Asians. And yes, there was definitely some sort of like hierarchy within the white race, but there are other forms of oppression outside of racism.
Assume that because we're white, we don't experience racism. And coming from a white woman, I'm only talking about my own perspective. I can't speak for black people. I can't speak for any other race except my...
You know, about 10 years ago, my best friend, who was white, called me up. He said he had just got an account with this bank and they immediately gave him a loan. He called me because he knew that I had a better paying job and I had better credit than him. So I said, yeah, I am looking for a new car. I think I'll go check it out. I went there, I got an account, and then I inquired about a loan. Now I'm working with this older white woman, and she immediately tells me that I'm not qualified for anything. So I leave. I come back about a year later with 2 jobs this time. And I'm greeted by another older white lady. She tells me that I'm still not qualified, that she needs to see more from me. So I leave. I come back a year later, this time with the best job that I've ever had, that paid more than I had ever been paid before. Also at this time, my friend is getting his second loan on a car. She looks at everything and says that she needs to still see more. So I said, you know what, forget this. I'm going to do it on my own. So I go out and I buy my first brand new car. High interest and all. A year later, I come back to get it refinanced, and I'm greeted by a younger white woman. She takes a look and she sees everything that I've done and tells me that she just needs to see more. So I leave. About 6 months later, I decide to try one more time to get that car refinanced. This time I'm helped by a younger black gentleman. He takes a few seconds to look at everything and immediately approves me for that loan. I wonder why. tell me as a white person when you've had any experience like that.
New car. I think I'll go check it out.
So, for me, it was last week. Last week, I applied for a position that a friend of mine happened to already have had. My friend does struggle with alcoholism. He is not black, has no computer skills to speak of, and has never been in any sort of customer service industry where he excelled. He's really not good with people. Basically, we both have the same driving experience. I have years and years of customer service, do not struggle with any sort of alcohol addiction, and have a very clean driving record. It was for a driving position. He got the job. He gave up the job because there was a conflict. He didn't want to be vaccinated, and that's fair. I wasn't even offered the position. That was last week. That's what it's like.
Okay, so, because I wanted to be so very much sure, I went ahead and did my own little research on Google, and this is what I found out, guys. So let me just go ahead and read for you. While assumptions and stereotypes about white people do exist, this is considered racial prejudice and not racism. Racial prejudice refers to a set of discriminatory or derogatory attitudes based on assumptions derived from perceptions about race and or skin color. Thus, racial prejudice can indeed be directed at white people, e.g., white people can't dance. That is not considered racism because of the systemic relationship to power. When backed with power, prejudice results in acts of discrimination and oppression against groups or individuals. In Canada, white people hold this culture power due to Eurocentric modes of thinking rooted in colorism that continues to produce and continue to reproduce and privilege whiteness. It is a whiteness that has the power to define the terms of racialize others' existence. Yeah, so I'm sure you can see the rest. So make sure you guys subscribe to this channel, turn on your notification bell if you have not, and I will definitely see you in my next video. Peace.